Good morning, Columbus. This is Curtis Hendricks coming to you live from Goodwill's Work and Community Services down here in Groveport. Today's topic of discussion for our virtual vocational training is learning styles. Knowing what your learning style is will increase your learning ability, can help you communicate with the training specialist that is trying to train you something, because if you can tell them what your learning style is, they can adjust their curriculum to better assist you in getting the training that you require to be more competitive in today's work and job markets. So today we are going to look at the different learning styles, define them, and then look at some of the characteristics and see what kind of suggestions there are to help you learn with these learning styles. So please feel free to ask any questions along the way. Let's get started. So learning styles. What is the definition of learning styles? The term learning styles speaks to the understanding that every student learns differently. Technically, an individual's learning style refers to the preferential way in which the student absorbs, processes, comprehends, and retains information. For example, when learning how to build a clock, some students understand the process by following verbal instructions, while others have to physically manipulate the clock themselves. This notion of individualized learning styles has gained widespread recognition in education theory and classroom management strategy. Individual learning styles depend on cognitive, emotional, and environmental factors, as well as one's prior experience. In other words, everyone's different. And I got this at that website link below. So, which learning style are you? The learning styles, their characteristics, and learning suggestions. Are you a visual learner? See how we've got, which one of these do you feel is the visual learner? If you guess the one on the right, you are correct. She is visualizing the table, and that helps her understand and match the word table with the picture of the table. So, a visual learner. Visual learners are those who learn through seeing. Visual learners typically share the following characteristics. They're good at spelling but forgets first names, find quiet study time beneficial, enjoys colors and fashion, they dream in color, they understand visual elements and charts, and they're able to learn sign language easily. Well, I am definitely not a visual learner. Learning suggestions. Let's see. Things that would help you learn as a visual learner: drawing a map of events in history or draw a scientific process. So putting something into a visual reference will help a visual learner. Make outlines of reading assignments. Copy what's on the board, so whatever the training specialist is writing down, if they're writing it and you're copying it down, you're looking at those words, you're using your vision, and that helps you better understand that. Diagramming sentences, using flashcards, taking notes and making lists. Again, these are all visual references. Watching videos. So I could explain the process to you all day long, but having a video would explain better to a visual learner than me talking to them. Mark up notes with highlighters, underlines, and color coding. Again, using all the visual cues and ways to engage a visual learner will help that person learn more effectively. Auditory learner. Can anyone guess how an auditory learner learns? Bet you it has something to do with sound. So, auditory learners are those who learn best through hearing. They typically share the following characteristics. like to read out loud. They're unafraid to speak up in class, good at giving explanations and oral reports. They remember names, notice sound effects in movies, enjoy music, able to follow spoken directions. They struggle to stay quiet for long periods of time, but they do stay focused in study groups. So, learning suggestions. What can you do to learn as an auditory learner? Use word association to remember facts. And so, using word association, you are taking a word that sounds something similar to what you're trying to remember is going to help you remember what that is. If there's a picture, you're going to find a word that can associate with that, like table, like our previous example for visual learners. That's a word association. Record lectures, and that way you can listen to them back again. That repetitious listening, that helps you. Watch videos, but you're not just watching videos to see them. As an auditory learner, you're watching videos to hear them. You repeat facts with eyes closed. Participate in group discussions. Use audio for language practice. And read notes out loud after writing them. These are all ways that an auditory learner helps their learning process, are all ways to engage that auditory processing. Everything that you're doing, like me talking to you out loud right now, if you're an auditory learner, you're learning a lot more from me talking than you are actually reading along. Unless you're reading out loud and you've got me on mute, then you're probably doing perfect on your own. So that's an auditory learner. Kinesthetic learner. What do we think kinesthetic learners are, and how do they learn? If you guessed hands-on and demonstrations, you are correct. So kinesthetic learners are those who learn through hands-on experience. They typically share the following characteristics. They're good at sports. Let's see. Sorry, I got interrupted there. Good at sports. Can't sit still for long because they, got to be moving. May have sloppy handwriting. Another thing that I read is that if they may push really hard on their pencil. So if you got really heavy handwriting, they could be a kinesthetic learner. They learn well through lab and modeling activities. Study with loud music. Enjoy adventure books and movies. And they're fidgety during lectures. So if you're sitting at home and you're watching this video and you can't sit still, chances are you're a kinesthetic learner. So what are some learning suggestions for this learning style? You may want to break your studying into shorter sections or study in short blocks. So you may want to take what you're trying to learn and break it into smaller, more manageable pieces. So when you start feeling fidgety and the need to move, then you have that, you've allotted yourself that moment to get up and get busy, get that movement that your body needs. Take lab-based classes. So some of our new skills labs are based on kinesthetic learners because a lot of the individuals we work with do have this learning style where they have to be able to get hands-on and manipulate things and see it, touch it, feel it, and experience it. So a lot of the skills labs are set up for a lab-based learning. Act out your study notes. So say you've taken notes, but if you act them out, then you're being physically involved, and it's going to make more sense to you. Take field trips to reinforce knowledge. So going out on a community outing after talking about a certain job and then going out to that job and shadowing them or just observing it will make much more sense to you as a kinesthetic learner. An example of that would be in the architectural field. It's one thing when you're drawing blueprints, everything looks a certain way when it's in two-dimensional form, when it's on paper or on the computer and you're doing your blueprints. But then when you go out to a job site and you actually see it being built, it looks completely different, and you can kind of see how the two go together. Kinesthetic learners do better studying in groups and using flashcards and memory games. Again, these are things that they can manipulate in their hands and work with. Makes it much easier. So, verbal learners. What do we think? How do we think verbal learners learn? Oh, I know. It gave you the hints right there on the picture. All right, verbal learners favor using words and linguistic skills. That's a tongue twister. In speech and in writing. So verbal learners are really good at reading, writing, listening, or speaking. They love word games. They're very good with puns, rhymes, etc. Strong public speakers. They learn well through verbal teaching and writing activities. So if I gave you a assignment after watching this video, verbal learners would probably do pretty good. They prefer to read about a concept than listen to audio to support the concept. So again, this video is great for verbal learners because you can read along with me while hearing me talk to you saying the same thing, and it's really going to support the concept of what a verbal learner is. You also like to write notes to read out loud later. And that's even good for a lot of different people, because sometimes you write stuff down and your inner dialogue is going on in your head, but to sit and actually say it out loud will help you better understand and better grasp it. Like if you're being introduced to somebody for the first time and they introduce themselves, when you meet this person, if you repeat back their name out loud, it gives you a better chance of remembering that person's name. So what are some of the learning suggestions for verbal learners? Use acronyms or mnemonic devices. Read in a varied way rather than in monotone. So it would all based on, like my ninth grade health teacher. He always spoke in this monotone voice, and it never really changed from this, and you had to listen to this voice for 45 minutes, and it just got really boring, and sometimes, actually maybe a lot of times, kids fell asleep because it just kind of droned on forever. I don't like to talk like that. I like to have some sort of inflection in my voice. I like to change up my pattern, take some pauses, get a little excited every now and then, raise my tone, all this kind of fun stuff. It adds variety in there for verbal learners. Role playing, for example, practicing elevator pitches or interactions between employees and clients. Those are great ways for verbal learners to learn. Teaching others the material. I don't think I've ever found a better way to learn something or to remind yourself maybe what you did not have correct was to try to teach somebody else the material. Teaching is a great way to learn because you're going to learn everything that you have not been doing correctly, and it's really going to give you a chance to talk out loud and run through this and try to understand the material. So reread and rewrite notes, including summaries. Oh, I couldn't do this, but verbal learners can. reading the notes over and over again, or even just rewriting them and then reading them again and doing summaries. These are all ways that help verbal learners learn. And show or provide lists of keywords. Doing keywords is a great way. Again, that goes back to acronyms and mnemonic devices, which if I would Google mnemonic devices real quick, mnemonic device. Google's a great thing. A mnemonic device or memory device is any learning technique that aids information retention or retrieval in the human memory. Mnemonics make use of elaborative encoding, retrieval cues, and imagery as specific tools to encode and any given information in a way that allows for efficient storage and retrieval. Wow, you know what? Okay. So, like an example, there's a mnemonic device to help with like order of operation for math. They use PEMDAS, PEMDAS. So that's an acronym. The mnemonic device is Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. Now, if you're familiar with math, you know that order of operations is important to solving a problem. So P, or please, is for parentheses. You always do the stuff that's in the parentheses first. E, they say excuse, but it's the exponent. So once you look for the exponent, you include the exponent. M, for my, they put multiplication. You always do multiplication first. D, dear, stands for division. Then you do division. A for aunt is addition. And then S for Sally, subtraction. Or even for music, every good boy deserves fudge. E.g., every good boy. B, D deserves fudge. Those are notes on this scale. And then there was another one, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. So these are all important. All right. Social learners. What do we think about social learners? How do social learners learn? Yeah, I decided to mix things up today with my PowerPoint and used clip art instead of real photos. Hope you don't mind. I just like to do something different every now and then. So what are these guys doing here on the fronts? They're socializing, right? They're working in a group. That's what social learners do. Social learners process information by interacting with and relating to others. They enjoy working with others and are often strong leaders. So, social learners, they like to hang out with large groups of people. They do well with study groups or any sort of collaborative activities. They struggle working alone, especially on projects. They are vocal and are not afraid to ask questions. They prefer social activities. They are good at understanding others, interpreting tone, gestures, and faces. They are natural leaders, and they usually don't have trouble making new friends. Well, geez, by those characteristics, I could almost be a social learner. So maybe that's one of my strengths, is that I am a social learner. But I think I had to teach myself how to be a social learner in order to be that way, because a lot of these characteristics were not in me back in the day. So, what are some of the learning suggestions for a social learner? Well, social learners, you have to be inquisitive and ask, what a social learner is, what they think about concept, topics, or ideas. So, they will be afraid to ask questions, or they're not afraid to ask questions, so they're going to ask, they're going to talk about the concept, they're going to talk about topics, they're going to talk about ideas. But if you don't know, sometimes you may need, as a training specialist, you would need to try to promote that as well. and try to engage them with that. Let's see. Social learners like to bounce ideas off each other and compare their ideas with others. But you have to allow them to discuss and share stories. So if you know you got a big group of social learners, you got to let them do it socially in a group setting, in order for them to talk it out, because a lot of the times they need to bounce their ideas off one another to kind of talk it out loud. Sometimes I'm really good at that with certain people, where I've got this idea in my head and I just got to talk it out loud because it's stuck and I can't make sense of it. I can't find my direction. But by talking with somebody out loud, or even just a couple people, and hearing their input because they're listening to me and they might be reflecting something back, it really kind of helps hone the concepts. They do a lot of group work, and engaging in role play is very effective for a social learner. So if you're a social learner and if your training specialist is just droning on and on about a topic, ask them if you guys could act it out or do a group project to try to reinforce the skill, or if you guys could break off into groups and have group discussions about it. It would really help foster your learning experience with what we're trying to teach you. Logical mathematical learners. Oh no, this one's a tough one. How do we think logical mathematical learners learn? All right, by the numbers. That was a joke. Logical learners favor using couldn't read my own writing. Logical learners favor using logic and reasoning. They like to classify and categorize information and solve problems with numbers. Logical learners are especially good at analyzing cause and effect relationships. I'm pretty sure I have a very good logical mathematical learner as one of my employees right now, and I'm trying to get them to understand that I'm more of a visual kinesthetic learner, or even just a verbal learner, versus trying to get all the nuts and bolts. Yes, I like numbers, and when I'm talking budget, I need to see numbers. Makes it easier for me to understand. But if you're like me and somebody starts talking a lot of technical jargon, my eyes are going to glass over, I'm going to get fidgety, and I'm not comprehending any of it. So, the characteristics of a logical mathematical learner is they like to keep detailed planners and organizers. They enjoy playing strategy-based games, are highly investigative and curious, prefer visuals over words, are highly goal-oriented, seek out rules and procedures, may struggle writing creatively, and may have difficulty seeing big picture. Now it's interesting because some of these I personally can identify with. Can you identify with any of these? And that's one thing that you need to keep in mind over all of these different learning styles is there may be characteristics from several of them that you may identify with. And in knowing that and you explaining that to staff will help enrich your learning experience. So for me, taking a look, I don't consider myself a logical mathematical learner, but looking at some of the characteristics, I enjoy playing strategy-based games. I am highly investigative and curious. I do prefer visuals over words. And I like to seek out rules and procedures. And that's, for me, those are key characteristics, but I don't identify as a logical mathematical learner. So what are some of the learning suggestions that would help a logical mathematical learner? Well, being provided with problem-solving tasks. So if I give you an assignment that requires you to solve a problem, Like, take Legos, for example, and I don't know if anybody saw the Lego Builder show that was on TV and Hulu, if you have Hulu. They had one episode where they had to build a bridge, and it had to be a weight-bearing bridge, and they had rules that they had to meet for that. It had to span so far, had to be level with this, and it had to hold weight. So, giving somebody a problem-solving task like that to a logical mathematical learner is giving them a gold mine of information which they can work with and learn. Challenge them to work things out for themselves. So you really don't want to spoon feed them the information, because their learning process is investigating how it works, how it all comes together. Certain individuals here, they like to take things apart because they're trying to investigate how things work. So let's challenge them to put it back together and get working. Let's see. Other learning suggestions: interpret abstract visual information using critical thinking exercises, use statistics and facts, and suggest conclusions and provide evidence. So, logical mathematical learners, these are ways that's going to help you learn more effectively with things that are being taught here. Solitary learners. I know we're probably already pretty sick of our solitary sessions right now, but that's probably because you're not a solitary learner. Solitary learners like to work and learn by themselves in self-study. They may come across as shy or cold as they keep to themselves. So it's a very interesting concept. Solitary learners, they love to keep a journal or diary, enjoy spending time alone. They struggle in large crowds and noisy rooms. They like to set goals and make plans. They struggle opening up to others. They are excellent in self-management skills. They have a strong sense of self and are highly independent. Now, how can a solitary learner learn? Well, you need to ask questions so you know what you're thinking and feeling. Use individual problem-solving exercises. Ask the training specialist to explain why the lesson material is important. As solitary learners are often interested in outcomes. So along with this, give ways to track progress. Suggest links between what they have previously learned or should know and new concepts. So in that sense, you're kind of unlocking previously known information or prior experiences. So when that is being engaged, you can help make those connections and you're going to learn so much more effectively. But solitary learners, give them problem-solving stuff, help them map out the lesson, show them what the outcome is, and give them a way to track the progress on how they're going to learn that information. So, but let them do it, because they're going to want to do it on their own, because it's that independent thing. I was raised, even though I had two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother, both my parents worked, and they worked alternating shifts. As most families did in the 80s that needed double incomes. So that way they weren't spending extra money on childcare. It's hard to do. My wife and I struggled to do something like that. But it created a lot of independence within me I like to do things on my own, one-on-one, just me and whatever the problem is. And I like to explore the material. And so earlier in my life, I really struggled to open up in large crowds, and noisy rooms really got to me. I never really was much for journaling or diarying, but it is what it is. I enjoy spending time alone, and I do a lot of my problem solving alone. So I would have preferred if somebody would, ask me questions to help me come out of it a little bit and speak out loud what I was thinking and feeling. Somebody, if they would give me individual problem solving exercises instead of group activities, I would have learned more effectively as a youngster. Or even someone just sitting down and explaining the lesson material, which one of my professors in college recently did, sat down and just mapped out the whole course for the semester. And that really gave me a sense of what to expect and how it was important to meet the outcome of the class. So that was very effective for me. So after learning all of this, which learning style do you best identify with? Are you a verbal? Are you a visual? There's even musical, auditory, kinesthetic is also known as physical, solitary, social, logical, mathematical, or even a combination. You can have a combination of any of these learning styles. The more you know about how you learn, the more effective your learning is going to be. And that's going to be very important coming up here with all the changes that we've done with our programming here at WCS. So not only are the staff looking out to try to better understand and identify your learning styles, but if you can help us with that process and know what your learning style coming in is, that's going to help us better reach you and better teach you. Because it's all about learning. And as much as we enjoy everybody, the more information we have about you, the better that connection's going to be, the more enriched in the programming you are going to become. So I hope you learned something through all of this and can be able to at least get one or two learning styles down that that we can come back to, and you can come up here and say, hey, Mr. Curtis, I watched your video. I know that I'm a kinesthetic learner, or I know that I'm a social learner, or I know that I'm a verbal learner. That's going to mean so much to me, and that's going to be able to really help me guide you in the right direction with the programming and how you need to learn. And staff is going to be able to better teach and help reinforce the skills that we're trying to teach you for greater independence, for community integration, for a nice job out in the community, whatever it may be. And employers look for this as well. The more that you understand how you can learn things, the easier you will be to be trained by a future employer. The more flexible you can be, because you may have a combination of these learning styles, then you can go back and, when you're getting trained for your new job, you know exactly what you need to do to pick up that material as quick as possible. Employers look for that. So, watch this video again, take it all in, take some notes, however you need to figure out what your learning style is. Come back to us here at the workshop, ask for me, and I want you to tell me what your learning style is. I'll be excited to hear from you guys. All right, one more time. our big overview. Thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.